High Admiral Zexthor stood on the command bridge of the Imperial warship Eternal Flame, his scaled fingers drumming against the polished obsidian control panel. The massive view screen before him displayed a small blue planet, unremarkable except for one detail. It was the source of energy readings that shouldn't exist on such a primitive world. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had conquered 37 star systems. "My lord," his science officer, Vextalia, responded, her crimson eyes fixed on the data streams. "Earth remains as our initial scans indicated. No orbital defense platforms, no significant space fleet. Their most advanced vessels appear to be primitive chemical rockets." The Admiral's lips curled into what his species considered a smile. 300 warships of the mighty Draconian Empire hung in formation behind his flagship, each one capable of reducing a continent to ash. This would be the easiest integration yet. "Their global communication networks?" he inquired. "Primitive, my lord. Mostly wireless transmission of entertainment content and simple data packets. They still rely on physical infrastructure for most communications." Zexthor nodded, his ceremonial armor clicking softly with the movement. The Draconians had been watching Earth for the past 3 solar cycles, intercepting their broadcasts and studying their civilization. These humans seemed obsessed with creating fictional stories about alien invasions. How ironic that they would now face a real one. "Begin the standard intimidation protocol," he ordered. "Position the fleet above their major population centers. Let's see how these humans handle the sight of real warships." The fleet moved with practiced precision, breaking formation to spread across Earth's skies. Massive ships, each 1 kilometer long, took position above cities like New York, London, Tokyo, and Beijing. Their dark hulls blotted out the sun in places, casting enormous shadows over the urban sprawls below. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, something strange in the human response patterns. "Explain." "Their military forces are mobilizing, but not in any way that makes sense. They're moving equipment away from the cities. No defensive positions being established. No weapon systems targeting our ships." Zexthor frowned. In his 60 years of military service, he had overseen the integration of dozens of worlds. There was always a pattern: panic, futile military response, then inevitable surrender. But these humans, their civilian population. That's the strangest part, sir. No significant change in behavior patterns. Their vehicles continue to move in normal traffic patterns. Commercial activities continue. Entertainment venues remain open. It's as if they don't see us as a threat, Zexthor finished, his frown deepening. He studied the tactical displays showing the scenes below. Humans walked their streets, went to their jobs, and carried on with their lives despite the massive warships hovering above them. Either they were too primitive to understand the danger, or "Send the standard integration demand," he ordered. "All channels, all languages we've decoded." The message was transmitted, broadcasting the glory of the Draconian Empire and the futility of resistance. It was the same message that had begun the surrender of countless civilizations. Minutes passed, then hours. No response came. "My lord," Vextalia spoke up, "I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the surface. Very faint, but they don't match any known human technology in our database." "Impossible," Zexthor dismissed. "Their technological level is clearly pre-spatial. Maintain positions and continue broadcasting. They'll break soon enough." As the Earth's sun set below the horizon, casting long shadows through the Draconian fleet, none of them noticed the microscopic specks of silver rising from the planet's surface. The integration of Earth was proceeding exactly according to protocol, just not the Draconian one. 3 days had passed since the Draconian fleet's arrival, and Fleet Commander Zexthor was beginning to feel uneasy. He paced the command deck of the Eternal Flame, his clawed feet clicking against the metallic floor. "Another day without response," he muttered, watching the screens showing various Earth cities. "This isn't normal." Below them, New York City buzzed with its usual activity. Yellow taxis weaved through traffic. People filled the sidewalks, some occasionally glancing up at the massive warship above them, but most just continuing their routines. A few humans even appeared to be taking pictures, treating the invasion fleet like some kind of tourist attraction. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Kraz, the communications officer, "we're picking up some unusual patterns in their media broadcasts." "Show me," Zexthor ordered. The main screen filled with clips from human news channels. To his surprise, most weren't even talking about the fleet. Instead, they discussed something called sports scores and weather forecasts. The few that did mention the Draconian presence treated it almost like an afterthought. "Look at this one, sir." Kraz highlighted a particular broadcast. A human female was speaking casually about the ships while drinking something called coffee. "Yes, the alien ships are still there," the human newsreader said with a slight smile. "Traffic might be a bit slower due to the shadows they cast, so plan your morning commute accordingly." Zexthor's scales bristled. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen such indifference. "Status of their military movements," he demanded. Vextalia, still at her science station, pulled up the latest scans. "They continue to move equipment, sir, but not in any tactical pattern we can recognize. They're also conducting what appear to be routine training exercises. No aggressive posturing, no weapons aimed at our ships." "What about their leaders?" "The humans called politicians continue their normal schedules. Their United Nations is in session, but they're discussing climate change policies, not our presence." Zexthor slammed his fist on the control panel. "This makes no sense. We have enough firepower to turn their cities to ash. Why aren't they afraid?" Just then, a junior officer rushed onto the bridge. "Commander, we're detecting unusual activity in the lower atmosphere. Thousands of small objects rising from the surface." The main screen shifted to show the sensor readings. Tiny dots were indeed rising from Earth, but they were so small they had initially been filtered out as atmospheric debris. "Analysis?" Zexthor demanded. "Inconclusive, sir. They're too small for our primary sensors to lock onto. They appear to be some kind of artificial construction, but at a scale we've never encountered before." The commander felt a chill run down his spine. Something wasn't right. The humans' calm wasn't just strange. It was unnatural. They were acting like they knew something the Draconians didn't. "Send a probe to intercept one of these objects," he ordered. The probe launched from the eternal flame, streaking down through Earth's atmosphere. As it approached one of the mysterious objects, the feed suddenly went dark. "Probe status," Zexthor barked. "Lost, sir. Complete systems failure before impact." The commander stared at the Earth below, its surface peaceful and seemingly unthreatening. But now he could see something else in the humans' behavior. Not indifference, but confidence. They weren't afraid because they didn't need to be. "All ships," he commanded, his voice tight. "Raise shields to maximum power. Something's coming." But as the order went out, he couldn't shake the feeling that it was already too late. The human silence wasn't submission. It was the quiet of a predator watching its prey walk into a trap. "Commander, we've lost contact with the Razor Wing." The young communication officer's voice cracked with panic as another light went dark on the fleet status display. Zexthor gripped the edges of his command chair, watching as the third Draconian warship in the past hour went silent. No explosions, no debris, no distress signals. The ships simply stopped responding. "Show me the last transmission from Razor Wing," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, but instead of the expected military feed, strange images appeared. Humans in colorful outfits were dancing and singing something called "Never Gonna Give You Up." "What is this nonsense?" Zexthor growled. "Sir, it appears to be a human entertainment video from their internet," Vextalia explained, her claws flying over her console. "But that's impossible. Our communication systems are quantum encrypted. Nothing on Earth should be able to. She stopped mid-sentence as more screens around the bridge began showing different human broadcasts. Cat videos, cooking shows, and something called memes flooded their displays. "Shut it down," Zexthor roared. "Shut everything down." But the images kept coming. Their most secure military channels were being overwhelmed by human entertainment content. Even worse, their navigation systems had begun showing conflicting coordinates. "Sir," the tactical officer called out, "the Eternal Flame's position indicators are malfunctioning. According to our sensors, we're simultaneously above New York, Tokyo, and something called Disney World." Zexthor switched to manual controls, but they responded sluggishly. It was as if something was in their systems, playing with them like toys. A warning alarm blared. "Multiple small objects approaching the hull," reported the sensor officer. "They're similar to the ones we detected earlier, but there are millions of them now." The main screen showed a cloud of silvery dots surrounding the ship. Under maximum magnification, they looked like tiny machines, each smaller than a grain of sand. "Shields," Zexthor demanded. "Holding at full power, sir, but—" The tactical officer paused, checking his readings again. "The objects aren't trying to break through. They're interfacing with the shield frequency somehow." More alarms joined the first. System after system began reporting anomalies. The mighty Eternal Flame, pride of the Draconian fleet, was being invaded by machines too small to effectively fight. "Sir," Vextelia's voice carried a note of awe and terror. "I'm analyzing these devices. They're more advanced than anything we've ever encountered. Each one is a complete computer system, capable of self-replication. And—" Her console suddenly displayed a simple message in Draconian script. "We see you." Zexthor watched in horror as the message spread across every screen on the bridge. The humans hadn't been ignorant or primitive. They had been watching, analyzing, and preparing. "All ships, emergency protocol Omega," he commanded. "Prepare for immediate." The lights flickered. For a moment, the bridge was plunged into darkness. When the emergency systems came online, Zexthor realized something had changed. The ship felt different. "Status report." "Sir," the tactical officer's voice shook, "we've lost contact with 60% of the fleet. And our own ship. The hull integrity monitors are showing structural changes." Through the view screen, Zexthor could see it happening to other ships in the fleet. The mighty warships were being taken apart and reassembled, piece by microscopic piece. Their own technology was being turned against them by machines too small to see. The humans hadn't built up to face them. They had built down, and in doing so, had achieved something the Draconians had never thought possible. They had mastered the universe by mastering the infinitesimal. "Hull breach on decks 3 through 7. The damage control officer's voice barely carried over the sound of groaning metal. "No. Wait. The hull isn't breaking. It's transforming." Zexthor stumbled as the deck beneath his feet rippled. Through the massive windows of the bridge, he watched in horror as sections of his mighty flagship began to change. The sleek, dark metal was becoming something else, something with a distinctly human design. "Magnification on the hull surface," he commanded. The screen showed an incredible sight. Billions of tiny machines, each one smaller than a microbe, were taking his ship apart piece by piece. But they weren't destroying it. They were rebuilding it into something new. "Emergency transmission from the science vessel Crimson Scale," Lieutenant Kraz announced. "Playing now." A panicked Draconian scientist appeared on screen. "The humans. They've mastered molecular engineering. These aren't weapons. They're tools. Manufacturing plants smaller than dust particles. There." The transmission cut off as the Crimson Scale's form began to blur, its structure already halfway transformed. "How many ships are still responding?" Zexthor demanded. "Less than 100, sir," Vextelia reported, her scales pale with fear. "The nanites, they're not just dismantling our ships. They're absorbing our technology, learning from it, and improving themselves. Each generation is more advanced than the last. A new alert sounded, this one from within the ship itself. The internal sensors were detecting nanite activity inside the vessel now. Seal the bridge, Zexthor ordered. Maximum containment protocols. But even as the emergency barriers slammed down, they all knew it was futile. How do you stop something that can slip through the spaces between atoms? Sir, the tactical officer called out, I'm detecting changes in the atmospheric composition. The nanites are even rebuilding the air itself, adjusting it to Earth standard conditions. Zexthor realized then what was happening. The humans weren't destroying his fleet. They were claiming it, transforming it. Every ship they took was being converted into something they could use. Through the view screen, he watched as the dreadnought Star Crusher, pride of the Imperial fleet, slowly transformed into what appeared to be a human space station. Its weapon ports were becoming docking bays. Its shield generators were being repurposed into atmospheric containment systems. New message incoming, Kraz announced. Text only, in our language. The message was simple. Your crew will be safe. Your ships will serve a better purpose. Resistance is not advised. These nanites can distinguish between organic and inorganic matter, but that setting can be changed. As if to demonstrate, a small section of Zexthor's ceremonial armor began to shimmer and flow, transforming into what appeared to be a human business suit. Orders, sir? Vextalia asked, her voice barely a whisper. Before he could answer, the ship's artificial intelligence spoke, but its voice had changed. Gone was the cold, mechanical tone, replaced by something that sounded almost human. This vessel is now entering final conversion phase, it announced in both Draconian and English. All crew members, please remain calm. You will be transferred to comfortable temporary quarters during the renovation process. Zexthor, Supreme Commander of the mightiest fleet in known space, could only watch as his command center began to change around him. Sleek, organic curves replaced sharp military angles. Harsh red lighting softened to a comfortable Earth-normal spectrum. The mighty Draconian Empire, which had conquered countless worlds through overwhelming force, was being defeated not by weapons of destruction, but by creatures so small they made microbes look massive. And the humans hadn't fired a single shot. The holoscreen in Zexthor's temporary quarters activated without warning. Gone was the luxurious command suite of the Eternal Flame. His new room looked like something from a human luxury hotel, complete with what they called a coffee maker. Greetings, Fleet Commander, a human voice said. The screen showed a middle-aged woman in a simple military uniform. I'm General Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We thought it was time to explain a few things. Zexthor straightened his now transformed uniform. Even in defeat, a Draconian commander maintained dignity. You've certainly earned that right, he replied carefully. The screen split, and images began to play. Zexthor's eyes widened as he recognized them. Warfare, but not like anything he'd seen before. What you're watching, General Chen explained, is 6,000 years of human military history. We've been fighting ourselves far longer than we've been looking at the stars. The images showed battles spanning millennia. Humans fighting with primitive weapons, then machines, then weapons that could destroy entire cities. But it wasn't just the weapons that caught his attention. It was the strategies, the deceptions, the endless adaptations. You see, Chen continued, while other species focused on building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, we learned something different. We learned that victory doesn't always go to the strongest. Sometimes it goes to the most creative. New images appeared. Laboratories, scientists, rows of computers. 20 years ago, we detected your first scout ships at the edge of our solar system. We could have shot them down, revealed our true capabilities. Instead, we watched. We learned, and we prepared. The nanites, Zexthor said quietly. Exactly. Chen smiled. While you were building kilometer-long warships, we were learning to build at the molecular level. Your sensors were looking for weapons of war, but couldn't detect weapons of transformation. The screen filled with images of what looked like massive computer servers. This is the War Archive. Every conflict in human history, analyzed and simulated millions of times. Every possible invasion scenario, modeled and countered. We've been fighting aliens in our minds for centuries through something called science fiction. When you arrived, we had already defeated your invasion 1,000 times in simulation. Zexthor felt a chill run down his spine. The lack of panic when we arrived was because every human government knew exactly what to do. Your arrival wasn't a surprise. It was a scheduled event. Those military equipment movements you detected, not retreats. We were positioning our nanite production facilities. New data scrolled across the screen. Battle plans, contingencies, adaptations. The humans hadn't just prepared for one invasion scenario. They'd prepared for millions. But why show me this? Zexthor asked. Because, Commander, we want you to understand. Earth isn't defenseless. We simply choose how and when to reveal our strengths. Your fleet isn't being destroyed. It's being repurposed. And your crews aren't prisoners. They're going to be our guests while we negotiate with your empire. The general's expression became serious. We're sending you home with this archive. Commander, let your leaders study it. Let them understand that Earth doesn't need to build mighty fleets or planet-killing weapons. We learned long ago that true power lies in innovation, adaptation, and patience. As the transmission ended, Zexthor stared out his window at what had once been his fleet. The ships were almost unrecognizable now, transformed into elegant structures that merged Draconian and human design. The humans hadn't just defeated them. They had done it without destroying anything. And in doing so, they had taught the mighty Draconian Empire a lesson it would never forget. Sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones that don't bare their teeth until it's too late. The United Nations Assembly Hall had never hosted a meeting quite like this. Fleet Commander Zexthor, once the pride of the Draconian Empire, sat at a long table facing representatives from Earth's nations. His ceremonial armor, now permanently transformed into an Earth-style diplomatic uniform, felt strangely comfortable. Let's begin with the status of your crew members, said Ambassador Liu from China, consulting her tablet. All 247,000 Draconian personnel have been provided with comfortable quarters in what used to be your own ships. Would you agree they're being treated well? Zexthor nodded slowly. Better than well, actually. My people report they're fascinated by something called Netflix and video games. Some don't want to leave. Quiet laughter rippled through the human delegation. Dr. Sarah Chen, now sitting among Earth's representatives, smiled. Culture can be as powerful as any weapon, Commander. Speaking of weapons, the Russian representative leaned forward. Let's discuss your fleet, or rather, what used to be your fleet. The main screen activated, showing live footage from Earth orbit. Where 300 Draconian warships had once hung menacingly, there now floated elegant space stations. Their dark, aggressive lines had been transformed into flowing architectures that blended human aesthetic with Draconian engineering. As you can see, Dr. Chen explained, we've repurposed your ships into something more useful. The nanites preserved all the advanced technology. They just reorganized it. Your faster-than-light drives are intact. Your power systems are operational. We simply removed the weapons and added living spaces, research facilities, and hydroponics gardens. And you're offering to return them? Zexthor asked cautiously. Not exactly, the American representative replied. We're offering to share them. These stations will serve as joint human Draconian facilities. Your people can study our technology while we study yours. A cultural exchange, if you will. Zexthor thought about the nanites that had so easily defeated his fleet. I doubt there's much we could teach you about technology. You'd be surprised, Dr. Chen said. Your quantum communications are fascinating, and your gravitational control systems are elegant. We just approach engineering differently. By thinking small instead of big, Zexthor mused. Exactly. Which brings us to our proposal. Ambassador Liu slid a tablet across the table. On it was a comprehensive peace treaty, but unlike any the Draconian Empire had ever seen. There were no demands for surrender, no tributes, no subjugation. An alliance? Zexthor asked, reading through the terms. A partnership, corrected the British representative. Earth joins the galactic community as an equal. We share our nanite technology, with proper safeguards, and you share your spacefaring experience. Together, we advance. And if the Empire refuses? Dr. Chen's expression remained friendly, but her eyes hardened slightly. Commander, your fleet disappeared without a trace. No destruction, no debris, just peaceful transformation. Imagine what our nanites could do if we programmed them for less. Constructive purposes. The threat was clear but delivered with impeccable politeness. Zexthor couldn't help but admire the human style. One last question, he said. Why did you wait? With this technology, you could have conquered us years ago. Because, Dr. Chen replied, we learned long ago that the best victories don't come from conquering your enemies. They come from turning them into friends. Zexthor looked again at the transformed fleet through the window, a monument to human ingenuity and restraint. They could have destroyed everything, but instead, they chose to create something new. For the first time since arriving at Earth, he smiled. Perhaps it was time for the Draconian Empire to learn some new ways of thinking. After all, the humans had proven that sometimes the smallest changes could have the biggest impacts. 1 year after the failed invasion of Earth, the Grand Hall of the Draconian Imperial Palace buzzed with unprecedented activity. Representatives from 50 alien civilizations gathered to witness something unprecedented: the signing of the Sol-Draconian Cooperation Treaty. Emperor Vexthul, supreme ruler of the Draconian Empire, stood beside the human delegation. His ancient eyes watched as servants carried in a small, seemingly ordinary metal cube, Earth's gift to the galaxy. This, announced Dr. Chen, now Earth's ambassador to the stars, is a controlled nanite production facility. With it, any civilization can transform their worlds, not through destruction, but through renewal. The gathered aliens murmured in excitement. They had all heard the stories. How Earth's microscopic machines had turned the mightiest fleet in the galaxy into orbital gardens. How human innovation had achieved more in peaceful transformation than centuries of warfare. Fleet Commander Zexthor, now the Empire's chief of human relations, stepped forward. I once commanded 300 warships to conquer Earth. Today, those same ships serve as universities, research centers, and cultural exchange hubs. My failure as a conqueror became our Empire's greatest victory as allies. The main screen activated, showing footage from across Draconian space. Polluted worlds were being cleaned by nanite swarms. Ancient cities were being modernized without destroying their historic beauty. Warships were being transformed into exploration vessels and deep space habitats. The humans, Emperor Vexthul's voice carried across the hall, taught us what we have forgotten in our quest for dominance. True power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to transform. Their nanites could have reduced our empire to dust. Instead, they helped us build something greater. Dr. Chen smiled as she activated the cube. A holographic display appeared, showing the nanites at work, tiny machines dancing between molecules, turning waste into resources, pollution into pure air, weapons into tools. Earth doesn't seek to rule, she explained. We offer partnership. Our nanites aren't weapons. They're keys to unlock the potential in everything around us. In exchange, we ask only for friendship and knowledge. The effect on the gathered ambassadors was immediate. Species that had once feared the Draconian Empire now saw an opportunity for peaceful advancement. Civilizations that had been planning their own conquests began reconsidering their strategies. But remember, Zexthor added, his voice carrying a note of friendly warning, Earth's kindness should not be mistaken for weakness. They defeated our fleet not because they had superior weapons, but because they had superior imagination. They think differently, plan differently, and solve problems differently. The gathered species nodded in understanding. Earth's message was clear. They were happy to help uplift other civilizations, but they would not tolerate aggression. As the treaty signing began, Dr. Chen and Sexthor stepped out onto a balcony overlooking the capital city. Above them, a transformed Draconian warship, now a floating park complete with earth trees and draconian crystal flowers, drifted peacefully through the sunset. You know, Sexthor mused, some still call it the day the fleet vanished. But I prefer to think of it as the day we truly began to see. See what? Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. That the most powerful force in the universe isn't the biggest ship or the strongest weapon. It's the ability to imagine something better and have the patience to build it, one tiny piece at a time. Below them, the city sparkled with lights as night fell. Human and draconian children played together in parks built by nanites, while scientists from both worlds shared discoveries in transformed war rooms. The galaxy was changing, one microscopic machine at a time. And for once, the change wasn't coming through force or fear, but through the simple human idea that sometimes the biggest victories come from thinking small.